Okay, good afternoon. My name is Edna, and I'm a professor at UNEB University in Alagoinhas City. On behalf of the coordinator of the English language course at UNEB in Alagoinhas, I would like to say welcome to everybody who is here. And also, it's a pleasure to welcome you, Professor Clark, for accepting and taking her time to give this presentation. Let me tell more a little bit about Professor Clark. Uh, she's on the executive board of the Midwest TESOL, and she's a member of TESOL in the English language programs community. And finally, she has worked at the Fulbright program at the University of Kansas, the place where I met her because she was my professor at this university. Mm-hmm. Well, we are start the first part of the open seminars today with the topic Classroom Management Online, Theory and Practice. I do believe that the topic represents teachers and student reality during this pandemic time. So we have a lot to learn with Professor Clark today. Professor Clark, welcome again, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to listen this kind of topic that approach our reality. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Edna. So it's wonderful to see you again. And I'm so excited to be here with all of you. I do teach English online and face to face, and I have done teacher training. So I look forward to talking to you guys. I know many of you you're going to be future teachers, or some of you could already be teaching. So I really look forward to talking to you about essentially my best advice about navigating classroom management online. But also, I look forward to hearing from you about your expectations and questions that you have as well. So feel free to provide questions in the chat feature that you have, and then we'll have a chat time at the end where I can answer questions that you have as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started here. So again, the focus today is really going to be on practice for classroom management, because I think that's going to be what's most important. So you will notice, of course, that the classroom looks different. So face-to-face learning, it's a lot easier to, to consider your plan. So you may have a class that meets twice a week for 50 minutes, and you have, 3 activities that you want to accomplish during that time, and you make a plan and you adjust as you go. If the students look like they're unclear, then you can make adjustments. It's a lot easier to make adjustments in a face-to-face classroom. Online learning, it's a lot more difficult. There's a lot more planning that goes into the course well before you ever meet your students. And so making those adjustments for student needs can be a lot different. And even knowing what the students actually need can be very different as well. So before I get too far into this, I just would be curious to see what is one effective classroom management strategy? And maybe you don't necessarily know the formal words for it, but think about the classes that you've taken. What is something that you have noticed that your teachers do that you think works, either online or even face-to-face? So it could involve grouping. How does your teacher put you into groups? Or how do they quiet the classroom? How do they give you instructions? Those type of things. So what is something that you've seen that you think is effective? So I'd actually like to hear from you. And what I'm going to do and have done, and I will post again, is a link from Google. It's a Google document, actually. And with this link, you are able to type into the link. So I'm going to put that here in the chat. And hopefully, Edna, they're able to access the link. Is that correct? Or are they able to see the link that I sent in the chat?
Oh, yes, for sure.
Okay. Okay, great. So let me share a different screen. I want you guys to see what I'm looking at. So 1 second, please. Okay, so this is the document that I'm referring to, and hopefully you'll be able to access it soon. So we're looking at classroom management, and again, adapting classroom management for online teaching. So what classroom management techniques have you noticed from your online teachers, and are they effective? So if you're not able to write here, ideally we would all just collaboratively write here, but I also can add in some examples as well. So in terms of classroom management that I have seen that was really quite good is I've seen teachers who did a nice job of grouping large classes into small groups for online classes, for discussion boards. So when you're talking to other students, why is it effective? Because the class had 150 students, and now I really get to know 10 students. It's a smaller cohort of students, which I thought was really great as well. So are there any other ideas? I'm going to look in the chat to see, do we have any other ideas that you guys can see? We can't see the document. Okay. Hopefully you can see the document now. Okay, now it's okay, great. So I'm not sure if you guys can type. I don't know if you have access to the chat, but maybe in the comment section you can write, tell me some ideas that you have for things that are effective classroom management that you have seen from a teacher that you had. Oh, I see coffee. Coffee is one to get students motivated. I like that. I'm going to add that in there. Yeah. Coffee. Bring your students. Eshna and I were just talking about that. Bring your students coffee or candy. Actually,
yes, for sure.
Yes, actually, I can say not online, but in face-to-face, I very often brought students candy, very, very often for games and motivation. I can certainly say that as well. Okay. Savannah, so wonderful to see my students. Anything else? Let's see that we can add there. Edna, do you have an example that you could say that you think is a good classroom management technique?
For sure. I think the layout of the class that you give detail to the students has been a wonderful technique that I've used with my students some years ago before the pandemic time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what I hear you saying is like design, how you design the class, which we're going to talk about. That's perfect. So design helps students be clear on what to do. I agree. Can we think of anything else here? And you can keep thinking. We can always go back here. What I'd like you to have is this document later so that you can go back and use this as a resource as well. Because I know that, collectively, you know things that work in your context, which is really important as well. So we'll keep thinking about that. I'm trying to think of another one that I think is I've seen a teacher do. Actually, one was to give an agenda at the beginning of class. So again, students are clear on class activities. In a regular classroom, I would write that on the board. Here's our activities we're working on today. When you meet in Zoom, you still need to do the same thing. Students need to be very clear what to expect when they come to the sessions. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that because your context, future context, or current context could be very different from mine. So I want to give you a little bit of background. Currently, I'm teaching online only, and our courses for summer, we're meeting twice a week on Zoom. Actually, I'm using Microsoft Teams. And then we also have asynchronous work. So the students work independently on their own to submit work and complete work, but they also work with me as well. So those two combined activities create the class. Some online teaching is only asynchronous, so the students are completely independent in a way. There's no official meeting together. And so my current situation is a little bit more of a hybrid. So how you set up classroom management will depend on if you're meeting on online like we are currently, or if the students are working independently and you're communicating with them as well. So a lot of that will depend. Okay, so I'm going to stop my share, go back to PowerPoint, but I want you to be thinking about this. Go back and think about your teachers. What did they do in face-to-face classroom or even online as you've been taking classes or even in Zoom meetings? What are people doing with the technology over the past year that you think, yes, that works really well? Because I can't go over here and say, hey, stop doing this right now, or do this, or, oh, you don't understand, because I can't always see their faces and it's not easy to make those changes like we would normally in the classroom. So that's one major difference with online teaching that happens as part of it. So, but I've got to say, there's a lot that I like about online teaching that I hope that you'll be able to really kind of delve into that a little bit later. So, one second. Technical difficulty, which actually always happens with online teaching too. I'm sure you have been teaching before and you have a situation where there's a technical difficulty. I can't tell you the number of times that has happened to me as well. Okay, so what I'm going to cover today is just some basics because classroom management, we could be here all day, truly. There's a lot to talk about. So I'm going to try to hit what I think is most essential. And then as you're listening, you can take notes, you can think about it, and then come up with some questions to talk to me at the end. That's really quite important because I want you to be able to get what you individually need out of this talk. So that's really important to me as well. So what I want to cover is course design. We're not instructional designers, right? That's not our job. But we have to design really clear courses or the students are lost. It's just going to be the way it is. If you're in a face-to-face setting, you can show up, teach the class, pretty clear. If they're not clear, you can adjust it. We can't do that online. So we're going to talk a little bit about organization and scheduling, communication, of course, activities, and then finally a little bit about technology. And if there's something I've missed, then certainly let me know, and we will keep going from there. So my definition, there are many definitions of classroom management, but what I want you to think about here is that classroom management is not just how you put students in a group and how you give directions. It's really quite encompassing of everything, thinking about the student from the content to the skills you're trying to teach them, the assessments, the design of the class, managing the activities, managing student behavior and managing their behavior online, and communicating so that learning can be effective. So again, just the main concept is that classroom management ensures that students can learn. If you don't have clear classroom management, they're not able to learn clearly. They're confused. They don't work well together. They're late on their assignments. They're asleep. They have their cameras off. There's too many issues that can happen. So classroom management is just what you're doing to show I'm organized, I'm prepared, I know what I'm talking about, and I'm the king or the queen of this ship, and now this is what we're going to do. And students trust that. They can see that the class is organized, and it's really important. So what does classroom management look like? Again, if you start to reflect on it, certainly you've had teachers or you've been teaching that you know these things, but it's really easy to it's so broad, it's almost hard to conceptualize in a way. So first, let's talk about course design. So this is a lot of information. I'll make sure that Edna gets this PowerPoint to you, but I'm just going to touch on a few of these. You can look at some of these later. So what I want you to consider is that classroom management is not just like face-to-face where you show up and you kind of manage the situation. In order to manage a class online, you have to think before the class ever starts. What do you do once the class is started, and what are you going to do after the class is over when you're kind of reflecting and planning on the next class? So a couple of things. So first, is your course asynchronous or synchronous? Again, as I told you, my class is a hybrid, so there's both, really. So if you're meeting in Zoom, you will have a certain set of standards and expectations. If you're not meeting, you'll have a certain set of rules for how you want them to interact with Blackboard or Google Classroom, whatever learning management system you're using. Do you have all the content needed for the course? So that's something I really want to stress, and it seems silly, but having everything that you need before the class ever starts is really going to make for a strong class, because you can see from beginning to end, everything is logical. It's organized. All of the activities and the assessments relate to the learning outcomes. It's really important. Do you have course assessments, right? Do you have planned activities that match your assessments? So, sometimes in the classroom, we can do other activities that are not quite, it's like, I like this activity, I want to do it. It doesn't really match my outcomes. It doesn't really match my assessment. And it's like, you can't. Online, you don't have enough time. So everything that you're doing has to be really meaningful and really purposeful. So if the student's assessment is that they're going to give a presentation and you decide you want to show them a video, and by you, I mean Emily. So Emily decides she wants to show them a video about Michael Jackson. Well, that's nice. I like Michael Jackson, but that doesn't relate to them having the skills to give a presentation. So everything that you're doing is relating back to them being able to give their presentation that they need to do. Can you design your own module? And what I mean by module is like a weekly content. So over the course of the week, what are students doing Monday through Sunday? And that's something I want to point out as well. I'm sure you already know, but online, classes go from Sunday to Sunday. They're not traditional Monday, Friday. So it's a little different. You can actually give students work over the weekend. You can actually require that they turn things in over the weekend. So it's a little bit different with how you set up your class, and all of that really matters as well. What kind of content will you use? Are you using videos, right? So am I going to video my lecture? Am I going to keep them? Oh, one thing I didn't say, but keep classroom management. Just remember, your memory, it needs to be short. So any kind of video needs to be under 10 minutes, no longer than 10 minutes, okay? If your video is longer than 10 minutes, it's too much. It's just not possible to take in all of that information online, okay? So keep your lecture short. It would be better to give 2 lectures that are 20 minutes, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes here, than one 20-minute lecture. It's too much for students to listen to, particularly if you're giving it, well, in any language, it doesn't matter. Okay. But in a second language, especially, it's too much for working memory. Okay. And the other thing is to think about, look at the whole, the week as a whole. Students have families, they have lives, they have things going on. So the reason why we like online classes is so that we can take the class when we want to. So if I want to wake up and drink some coffee and then watch a video and then go do something else, come back, you're chunking the information in a way that's important. So all of this, I know it sounds kind of silly, but this is management, because you're setting up students to be successful. information will be clear, the content is doable, and they're like, yeah, I can do this. You're going to have a lot less problems with students when you do this. It's really important. What technology you use, just remember this, technology goes wrong. Technology is wonderful. That's why we can talk to each other today. It's a blessing, but it also goes wrong. So think about what technology you're going to use and keep it really simple. Okay. So if your term is 7 weeks, maybe 1 or 2 technologies, one technology where they get their information and one technology to talk to each other. Okay. If your term is 15 weeks, no more than 3, so you can email me. We use Blackboard and we use Microsoft Teams. That's it. If you want to use some different technology in a synchronous course, for example, I love Kahoot. I use Socrative. I use Quizlet. I use some apps and stuff in class. That's fine. But you don't want to give students so much technology because they have to learn it. Okay. So all of this, you're going to make this decision before the class ever starts. So you have your tests, you have your content, you know what technology you're using, all of that is clear. And you've decided, how am I going to talk to students? What are my school's rules about plagiarism? Because it's really hard to know if students are cheating online, right? So if I turn in a paper and Edna's like, I think Emily translated her document or she used something, she has to have already thought through, how am I going to talk to Emily? What are my rules? Do students know that? Do they know the consequences? So if Emily breaks the rule, what is she going to do to have that conversation with me, right? So before the term starts, all of those things. Then during the term, how are you supporting students? How are you talking to students? Is the technology working? Do you need to make adjustments? Are your activities engaging? So if this were a class and I was just talking to you for an hour, that would not be a great class. So if we were in an actual class, I would put you in groups. We would be doing interactive activities. We would use our phones and do apps, because you want students to feel like I'm a person and I'm engaging with my teacher and with my peers. So one thing, I'll give you a quick example. One thing I did is I had students, we met in Microsoft Teams instead of Zoom. The students can text message each other within that app. So I said, okay, here's a problem, like a puzzle. I want you to work with this partner, talk to each other, and then tell me the answer. And they were so fast. They were so much faster to talk to each other. And then they gave me the answers. Our team said this. So there are just many different ways to do that as well. Are you checking in with students? So if Edna is my teacher, she hasn't heard from me in a week. That's too long, right? So if you have a couple of days, Emily missed an assignment, then how are you checking in with students for them to know, this person knows about me. They know I'm missing work. They're talking to me and that type of thing. And then lastly, after the term, basically reflect. Did it work? Did it not? If it didn't work, how am I going to fix this, right? So that's a lot of information. But again, you'll notice, where is all of the work going for online teaching before the class starts? Honestly, almost a lot of your management is before. All of the planning that you do before it ever begins is really important. Okay. Also interaction. So again, before the term starts, do your planning. It is possible, and I have had this happen before, to overwhelm students by contacting them too often. So, again, set up office hours or say, hey, I'm going to be on WhatsApp from this time, or if you need me, email me then. Like, kind of set up whatever your schedule is that works for you. I have Microsoft Teams again, so students can send you messages on Microsoft Teams. So I would get messages in the grocery store because I had the app on my phone. So I'm in the grocery store answering questions because students are taking tests. And for me, it was much easier to answer their questions quickly than to wait for an email, because by then students are panicking. Tests are timed online. So I felt like the best thing to do was to give the students a way to contact me quickly in a way that they would get an immediate feedback as well. So I got that tip from another teacher, and I thought it was a really good one. Again, I think the students can expect to hear from me daily, but I don't want to send them 20 emails a day. It's just overwhelming. So again, if you've planned the course, you shouldn't have to email them 20 times. So you've set up the course, you gave them due dates, you gave them the content, you met in class, and now they're like, I know what to do. If students are clear on what to do, you're not going to have problems with them. You're not going to have as many questions. So again, just think about it this way. All the time you put into planning means less problems later, and that's really important. Remember that students engage and interact with the teacher, each other, and the content. So when you plan your course, you're planning the content, but you're also thinking, do I want them to work together online? And the answer is yes. The students, this is not an independent study. This is a classroom. It's online. So they should still be working together. You're still giving pair work. You're still giving group work. You're still having them give presentations. You can still do discussions in Zoom. You can put them in breakout rooms. All of this is possible. So what you're doing is you're planning, this is the activity I want to do. How do I want them to do it? Do they do it on their own? Do they do it together? Do they do it with me? They come and present to me. That's a possibility. So you have to make those decisions. But at the end of the day, and I can tell you this for certain, when students come to a synchronous course, so they come to Zoom or Google Classroom or wherever you're meeting right now, they want it to be interactive. They don't want you to talk to them and they just listen. They can do that at home on their own time. They can hit mute and eat a sandwich. So it has to be a situation where if they're coming to class, we're going to do something interactive. We're doing a Kahoot. We're playing a game. We're writing an essay together. We're doing some kind of lesson that makes it worth coming to class. Otherwise, they can just do it on their own. And so that's really important as well. And then you have to think again, what are your office hours? I gave students office hours, but a lot of times they didn't come. And it's because they could contact me when they needed me. So they didn't really have to. And then a lot of times students would just stay after. So we would meet on Mondays and Tuesdays and, Monday, Wednesday, and they would just stay after class, just like they do in a face-to-face scenario. I would say, you know what, I've got some time. So class is over, but if you've got more questions, I'm here. And they would stay and ask me the same questions like they normally do. Another thing that I didn't put on here, but I highly recommend, is meeting with your students individually at some point. It depends on how many students you have. But I was really able to, have a better relationship and also to really kind of intervene with students. They were working on an essay. They were way off on their research, way off on their topics. And I could meet with them and say, tell me your topic. Explain this to me. Okay, no, I think you're going to have to revise it. And that was really important. And then again, what technology are you using as well? All right. Again, you're pre-planning. So how are you meeting them for office hours? How are they talking to each other? I'm just giving you an example of my pre-planning. So discussion board buddies. I ended up not using VoiceThread. I ended up, again, using Microsoft Teams. Everything I could do was in Microsoft Teams for me. And then content. So the students would have tests. They wrote papers. They did peer editing. They did a lot of different things as well. And then again, the main point I want to point out here is actually here at the bottom. So whatever you decide to set up, you want to have a routine, you want to have a repetition. I'll give a quick example. I have a friend who took an online class. The way it was set up is that the discussion board posts were due every Friday. So in her mind, that's what, it's Friday, I'm going to have to do this. And the teacher decided to change it in the middle of the term. And the teacher's like, I decided I want you to do discussion board on Wednesday. She was late. She did it in her mind. This was the pattern of the course. So again, you have to decide all of that before you start because students are going to be very confused, right? So you want to make sure that all of that's really clear. Scheduling, again, just imagine you schedule work that students can complete on time. If students can't do the work, you're not managing the class, essentially, because they can't complete it. They're not ready. They can't. There's nothing worse than feeling like you can't do what someone wants you to do. And I personally feel philosophically that students want to please teachers. They really do. I mean, there's some students that don't care, but generally students want to please you. So be clear. This is what my expectations are. This is what I want from you. This is how I want to help you. Help me help you. And this is how you can be successful. It's a win-win. The students are happy and you're happy because the students are doing what you want them to do, and that's important. Do work that can be completed independently and in pairs or groups. So, and again, I had a class that's research paper writing. That's not particularly interesting, but I tried to make it interesting where I had them choose their topics and they debated their topics with their partner. I'm going to write about smoking in the classroom. And the other person asked questions like, well, can you find research and where would you find that research? And, is that interesting? I don't know. And then they get feedback from each other and it's very, very helpful. I think all of that is really important. Make your classes exciting. Students don't want to come online or otherwise to a class that's like, let me tell you, and it doesn't have to be games. I don't necessarily mean games. The goal is to learn, but it needs to be something that you personally feel excited about as well to help them learn. And that's really quite important. Appropriate for their proficiency, builds on their content that they already knows. And again, it's accomplishable. And I can tell you this is really quite important. Online, I think it's so hard. 45 minutes is not a lot of time. So during the regular term, fall, spring, I only see my students for 45 minutes. You can't do anything in 45 minutes. It's like I can do two things. I can say hello. We can do activity 1 and activity 2. And then that's basically it. The summer, I'm going to have 2 hours. So I have to completely reshape how I'm going to manage that because what do I do for 2 hours? So now we can do more group work. So you're always kind of thinking about how much time do I have and what can I do there as well. And so I talk a little bit about that. So classroom organization, if you have a synchronous class, change your activities every 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes. It needs to be boom, boom, boom. Okay, we did that. Now let's do it again. Do something else. So in a 2-hour course, I'm going to give them a break, but in a 2-hour class, they're going to do a different activity every 15 minutes. So again, you're thinking about working memory and student attention span. Check in with students. If you put them in group rooms, go to those rooms, talk to the students, ask questions. How are you doing? Oh, okay, great. And then, keep going to the other ones. Give students an agenda. I already mentioned that. So make sure you tell the students. So this is what we're doing today. And you can send the agenda beforehand. So on Tuesday, we're going to do this. On Thursday, we're going to do this. And that way students are prepared. Students like to know what they're going to do. Plan to facilitate and not lecture. So right now I'm lecturing to you because that's the medium I have. But generally, I would much rather, and you should be thinking, online teaching is not teaching. Online teaching is facilitating. You're a coach. You're setting up the content so they can work independently and then work with you, and you're working them through the skills with each other and with the content and with what you want them to do. So you're kind of coaching them. You're not just lecturing to them as well. Clarify that cameras have to be turned on. A lot of times, and I don't know if this is a situation there in Brazil, but we have students who don't like to show their face. It happens often. And so that's a classroom management issue, right? And so, put it in your syllabus. Tell them day 1, you have to be able to show your face. Even if you're, drinking something, I still need to be able to see you, to know that you're engaging with us. It's important that you be present when you're online. And then again, expect prior work to be completed. So if I'm meeting on Monday, Wednesday, I've given them I've given them work throughout the week. I expect on Monday that they've done this work. So if they come to class on Monday and they have not done this work, that's not going to be a very fun class. So again, classroom management, I've planned a backup plan, of course, but I'm also maybe going to put the students that didn't complete the work into a breakout room to finish their work. And I'm going to work with the students who've done the work. Again, with the concept of everything that I'm giving you to do is important. So you want to think about that as well. You're only giving them very purposeful work for them to accomplishment. And I think students will, it seems to help with students not completing work. If they know you're only giving them work that will help them be successful. No busy work. Asynchronous. So if you don't meet with your students, if you only see them through Google Classroom or through Blackboard or whatever learning management system you're using, you can build a pattern. So again, as I said, every Friday, you turn in a discussion board. Every Sunday, you have a test. Every Wednesday, you talk to a partner so that they know this is the pattern every week. It's really important. Give them clear due dates. So there's nothing worse than having a test coming, you don't know when it is. So that's really, really important online. That's going to help so that it's in your syllabus, if it's possible. But in the beginning of every weekly module, you tell them you have 3 tests this week. These are the due dates, and tell them date and time. And then have a policy. If you turn in this past 11:59 at night, what are you going to do? Will you take the work? Will you take 10% off of it? You have to make those decisions before, because as you know, students will be late. They will not turn something in. And you have to have a plan to manage that. Are you going to give them a 0? And that's a decision that maybe is salient for your classroom, or that may be a personal decision as well. Give students models so that they know what you're looking for. Put information in predictable places. So again, when you're designing your course, they should be really clear to know this is where I go to get this information. You want it to be just really easy, really simple, really clear. And that's going to help manage your class a lot. Be available for questions. So again, either via office hours, via email, however you set that up. And then again, consider how you spread out difficulty levels of task. So you want to ideally, if you have a seven day a week class, you want to have them have something due, not every day, but maybe 2 or 3 times a week. So they have something due on Wednesday, Friday, Sunday to keep them engaged. You want the students to come back to that class. You want them to have something due. You don't want them to push to Sunday because, we're humans. Humans procrastinate. So if you say all of your work is due Sunday, what are they going to do? They're going to wait to Sunday to do the work. So you need to make them have to do things throughout the week. It helps them to engage with the class. It helps them to plan their time. It's just much better. All right, I'm going to pick it up a little bit. Communication, lots of things to say. Over here on the right are a couple examples of things I've done. So again, I use Microsoft Teams. You can give students, and actually they can give each other like awards. So I told the students they were awesome. I'm very proud of you and your hard work. I hope that you're proud of yourself. Keep up the excellent work ethic. And that was something that I gave an award to all of them for their hard work. Here, I posted a picture of a dog playing the piano, and I asked them to share at the beginning of the class, tell me your favorite memes. So share your favorite meme that represents you, and then tell me about yourself. So instead of having them do a discussion board in Blackboard, I had them do it in Teams. And what I like about Teams, you can heart, just like you can on Facebook, you can heart the person's response, you can like each other. It's just kind of fun. So from the very beginning, the students got to know me and got to know each other. It was really great. And so you have to really plan that in. How are students getting to know each other and getting to know you? Because if they know you and know each other, they're engaged. They're going to be invested, and it's a classroom. And then you don't have as much management to do because they're excited. At the very end of the term in spring, I asked the students, tell me reflect on this term. Tell me what was most important to you. And almost all of them said, I loved working with my classmates. And so again, you're building that into the course. So again, communication. Do students know how to find you? Do they know how to talk to you? Do you like emails? Do you want emails for some things? And I think that's fair. Email's a little more formal. Sometimes you have to be formal. Are your directions clear? Because a lot of times students have questions about directions. So if you want less questions, make sure your directions are clear. You may decide to put the directions in English and Portuguese. That may lessen the difficulty level. So you have some choices there. How do students talk to each other outside of class? So for example, with Microsoft Teams, they can talk to each other. So I can put them in groups, or they can call each other, they can video chat with each other, they can text message each other, and I don't have to be involved. So they can talk to each other without me being present, and I really like that about Microsoft Teams. What will your tone be? So actually, that's quite important. Email is really hard to understand someone's tone. It's really easy to be offended. So you're really always thinking about, especially in an email, if a student asks you a question that you're just tired, you're frustrated, and they ask you a question that you've already answered 20 times that day, you still have to pretend that it's the first time somebody asked you. And you can say, please review the syllabus. But you can't say, I told you that last week and you didn't do this. Like, you can't, you have to be soft, right? You can be firm with your deadlines, but you have to be soft, because it's really easy to cause some tension online that if students could see your face, they would know, oh, Emily's not mad, she's fine. But from the tone of my email, I sound angry or I sound frustrated. So you always are thinking about how to communicate that. Because here's the thing. If I had a teacher and I emailed them a question and they sounded rude to me, would I want to engage with that class? Would I want to do the work in that class? The answer is no. So you're thinking tone is really important in an online setting. And that affects your classroom management, because you are essentially setting up the tone for what students can expect from you. What information do you communicate? Of course, the content, but the concept is you've already created that before the class started, right? So your directions, again, hopefully your directions are clear. You can clarify your directions, but hopefully you're not adding content as you go. That's really important. And then lastly, what is a good balance for your class? So, again, students hear from you maybe daily, maybe every other day, but not 25 times a day, because that's just overwhelming for anyone. As we're all drowning in emails. I'm drowning in emails. You're drowning in emails. Don't send them emails if they don't need that. Make your content really clear, and you don't have to send them 500 emails. You still have to email them, but you email them really purposeful things, or you send them a reminder, or you send them an announcement. Reminder, you have a test today. Reminder, this is due on Friday, but you don't have to just continually write paragraphs in an email. It's just cognitively overwhelming for students, and that's really important. Okay, communicative activities. So, there's so many things you can do, and I didn't really get into that because a lot of that depends on the content of what you're teaching. But again, just remember, think about an activity that you want to do. And the main question you're asking is, can I do this online? Some things you can. Shockingly, you can. Some things you can't. Maybe if you're kind of trying to work that out, find a partner, find a buddy. You guys, some of you are still in school. So, I want to do this. Is it possible online? Okay, then what content do I need? What rubric? What directions? What technology? How am I going to set this up? Great. Try it. It didn't work. Next term, don't do that activity again, right? So, some of it's a little bit of trial and error, but a lot of it is just thinking about, can this work online? Okay. And that's quite important. So, moving on, a couple of techniques that I didn't get into everything because, again, there's so many things you could talk about. But before you start, plan your activities. So Plan recurring activities, things that students can kind of expect that are coming to give them a pattern. Plan, excuse me, plan your technology, how you're going to group students, what you want from them. Always give them rubrics so they know how they're going to be graded, if they're going to be graded. Write your expectations. Make sure they read the expectations and tell you they've read them. And then finally, again, give them some pattern, due dates, partners. Use your textbook. This part of your textbook we always use to do discussions. We do that, we do that in face-to-face classes, but it's really important in online setting. During the term, rearrange things. If you put a group of students together, it's not working. Classroom management, change it. Change the groups. Change out people. Be present. That's really important online. So if students are working in groups, either during a Zoom session, live, or on their own, be present. Students need to know you read their discussion boards, you check their posts, you come to their group sessions, because sometimes you group students and one student doesn't do anything, or they're late, or they don't talk, or they don't turn their camera on, or they're angry and they're having a fight. If you're present, you handle the situation, right? If I put a group of students together and one person is doing all the work, that's unacceptable. That's not going to work. So I want to be present so students have a way to communicate that to me so I can handle that situation and talk to that student individually. Remind students of your expectations. Check in with students and be present. And then finally, reflect. Did it work? What didn't work? Make revisions, because we all have to do this. This is the way it works. And then finally, talk to other instructors. What are you doing? How's that working? Because online teaching, especially of a language, is it's an art and a science. So we're always learning. I'm still learning. It's just life, so we're figuring it out. And just know that you don't have to have a perfect class the first time. If you follow these things, you're going to have a good class, and then you can make changes next time as you need to, based on your specific situation. So really quickly, I just want to look at a couple of activities. I know we're pressed for time, so we're just going to try to get to these really quickly. So I want you to imagine we're a class, and this is the activity I give the class to do, okay? So thinking through the classroom management techniques I've kind of talked about so far, I want you to consider what you think would work best with this. And if you can type in the comment section, I can see the comment section, so that would be really good. So imagine I want the students to market a new product. So the students are going to work together in small groups. They're going to come up with a new product. Maybe they're going to try to sell, it's hard to do this backwards, Gatorade, or they're going to come up with a new smartphone or smartwatch or whatever. So I want them to work together, but this one has to be for learning. So they have to come up with something that would help other students learn. And then they're going to sell their product to the class. So they have to make us want to buy their product, right? So how would I set that up online? What classroom management techniques would I need to be able to do that online? Or maybe the question is, would it even work online? Okay, so I'm going to pause for just a second. I'd like to see what you guys say in the comment section. So again, to reiterate, would this work online? Yes or no? And what classroom management technique would I need to make this activity work online? I like Joelma's coffee emoji in the comment section. That's pretty nice. So I'll give you my example. You guys can keep thinking. My example is I would think about how I want to group the students beforehand. So if they're working in small groups, who's going to be in the group? Okay, Pollyanna says it would work online. I think so. Personally, I think it would work. I agree. I would have to give them clear direction. What do I want them to do, right? Oh, Edna in one class. Oh, Edna, I'm helping you. How nice. I love it. That's amazing. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, you have a wonderful teacher. I can tell you that. Ask them to bring some fruit. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. They can make up their own fruit and then everybody gets to eat it. Leandro, I love that. I would use Microsoft Teams so students can work together. So I don't have to be there, right? So students can plan with each other. I don't even have to be there. Then the students would have to kind of check in. So they have to show their proposal. Maybe I want them to write a script. Maybe I want them to, write an outline for their presentation, something like that. So then I'm going to check in with them. They submit it to me. I give them some feedback. And then finally, they give a group presentation in Zoom. Done. Right? So again, I wanted you to kind of see through, there's so many different ways to set up classroom management for this activity, right? So this is for a synchronous and asynchronous section, because notice some parts of it, students are working independently with each other. Some parts I'm involved as the teacher. Some parts the entire class is involved. So a lot of that's really salient. And so I really like that. Yes, I agree, Pollyanna, she is amazing. Absolutely. All right. Activity 2, again, same concept. Now, the students are going to do a problem solution. They're going to write an essay, a problem solution, whatever that is, global warming, whatever, okay? But I don't just want them to write an essay. I want them to debate as well. I want it to be a formal oral debate. So back to my question before, is this possible online? So look at the example. So the first student is going to write an essay about something controversial, something that people want to argue about. Should students wear uniforms? Should people get vaccinated? Whatever it is that people feel very strongly about, okay? Then the second student is going to read the essay and disagree with them. So, Edna writes an essay about, whatever. People should not smoke on university campus. And I read her essay and I say, Edna, I hear your point, but I politely disagree because I'm a smoker. And for me, it helps my anxiety. And for me, blah, 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 right? So you listen, you debate back with me orally. And then finally, you can think about my points back to you and decide, do you need to make any changes to your argument? Maybe yes, maybe no. Okay. Maybe you change to strengthen your counter argument to argue back to me in your problem solution essay. And then finally, the first student would reflect, Edna would say, I listened to, Emily's debate. She gave me some good advice, but in the end, her arguments were very weak. And I decided to stick with my policy that students, should not smoke on campus, et cetera, something like that. Okay. So again, is it possible online? The answer is yes. This would be complicated online. I won't lie to you. It would be complicated, but it's definitely possible. So how could we do it? First of all, you have to put students in pairs. You have to group them, right? Secondly, you got to give them clear directions. And in reality, you would have to teach all of the students how to write a problem solution essay, because everyone's writing an essay and everyone's debating. So they would have to learn both of those things in theory at the same time. So you'd have to really kind of work through that in your curriculum. So maybe you start with writing. You teach the students how to write a really good essay where they argue their points and they argue a counter argument against the other side. Then you teach the students how to debate orally, and you put the activities together and let them do it. You have to set up the essay submission. Where are they sending you the essay? In Google Classroom? Personally, for me, I do not like to get emails. I don't like emails. So when students send me documents in email, they're like, teacher, I sent you my paper 3 days ago. And I just simply say, I probably lost it. What I need you to do is put it in a folder, in a designated place. If you send me an email, I will lose it. So you have a file folder in Teams. You can put it in a submission in Blackboard where I check it for plagiarism, always check it for plagiarism. Or you can put it in OneNote. I also use OneNote because OneNote is like, It's kind of like a journal. You can collaborate, and they have private journal folders for each student, and that embeds into Microsoft Teams. So I use that too. But all of that's quite important. And then finally, I would have student meetings to talk through both pairs, where they meet with me and say, this was, they kind of talk through their debate. So there's so many things you'd have to set up, but is it possible? Yes. I think it could be a little bit messy, but it's possible. And so you'd have to think through many, many, many steps to make that one work. And I also agree with Leo. It could be stressful. Don't give them something that's so stressful, but it has to be something you can at least argue about. If you can't argue about it, if everybody agrees, then there's nothing to debate, and it's not very interesting as well. And then lastly, and I know we could really argue linguistically whether or not you should do grammar translation, but let's imagine the first student writes in Portuguese. The second student translates to English. The first student goes back and sees, do we need to make any adjustments to the translation? Oh, I think you wrote that wrong. You wrote the wrong word for that. That should be this word, or your grammar was wrong, or whatever from there. So again, think about how you're going to partner the students, prepare the Google document or however they're writing together, give the students direction, put them into breakout rooms if it's live, or have them work on it collaboratively. You can check it later. And then again, show the final work to the students. So is this possible online? Absolutely, right? So a lot of your planning, pre-planning and then weekly planning, you're kind of thinking through, am I meeting students face-to-face in Zoom, or not? And then what activities do I want to do? And then each step of the way, what are they going to do? And then for each step, how do I need to manage this situation? And how can I do it online based on technology, student skills, student language ability, student technology, all of those things, and what you've taught them. And then that will really help you to get what you need in the end. And then finally, speaking of technology, and then we're almost done, you have a lot of options. I didn't get into everything. So if you want to talk about communication options, VoiceThread is great for speaking. The free version is okay, but it's not my favorite right now just because the paid version is so expensive. Flipgrid is still free. And if you have Google, that's a great one. So Flipgrid is great. I love Microsoft Teams. I've mentioned that a lot. Marco Polo does work abroad. I've checked. That's actually a phone video app. The only downside to that is you would have to create a group on your phone, and you would have to give your students your phone number. I personally don't give students my phone number, which is why I like Microsoft Teams. It's a boundary issue for me. If you're comfortable with that, that's okay. Email, discussion board, and then some way to collaborate. So some way that everybody can be looking at a document at the same time. And then how do you manage technology? Give them videos for how to use the technology, because students don't know. They don't know how to use the technology. Give them expectations for how to use the technology. Give them a model of what to do with the technology. Be present, of course, always. Follow up on any rules. So if you tell them they can't do X, they do X, you need to follow up and enforce whatever rule that you've set up in the beginning. And then finally, you may decide that you create class rules together. So maybe everybody decides in Flipgrid, we're going to make an emoji, and everybody uses an emoji face if they don't want to share their real face. Or maybe we decide, this is how we feel the language to be polite to each other online, because it's really easy to be rude, so we'd have some language for how to be polite. And you have to teach people this, because it's not a language issue. It's a communication issue. People are naturally rude in a lot of ways. We have to learn how to be polite. And so that's really important. And then we're at the end. So I covered a lot, but also I didn't cover a lot. So talk to me a little bit in the comments, or talk to Ejna if you can, if she can get your messages. What did I not cover that you still have questions for? Or what do you have more questions about? I did cover, but you have some questions. And I know I went way over my time, which is a bad example of classroom management, actually, because I'm way over my time. So we can keep those very brief, of course. Sure, Eliana, I would love to hear some questions. Yeah, so the camera issue. So sometimes, I think I think the best thing to do to start is to put it in your syllabus, right? So you give them rules in the very beginning and you always tell them your expectations. So your expectation is that students have their camera on. So that's one. It's in their syllabus. Two, you can also remind them. So first day of class and say, listen, I'm not a morning person. I had to comb my hair too, but it's really important that everybody, show their face. We can get to know each other. If you have a student who habitually does not, after you put it in your syllabus and you've reminded the students, just generally, just as a reminder, please turn your cameras on. If they still don't do that, it's really important to meet with that student individually and ask them why. So I like to always just ask why. So, I noticed, Edna, that you didn't turn on your camera or you haven't done that so far. Can you tell me why? Are you having technology issues? Do you have a bandwidth issue? Is your mother in the background cooking, do you know what I'm saying? Because right now they could have a real reason, right? And so you always kind of start it from a human perspective in a really non-accusatory way. Tell me why. Tell me why you haven't turned it on. And then you can simply say, it's really important that we see your face. It's really important that we engage with you. So if your technology isn't good enough, you're going to have to work on that. Or can you go to the library? Or can you, do it at night? Or I don't know, whatever you can try to help them problem solve it. Often, students will tell you one-on-one what their reasoning. And I have found that most people, I don't think they understand how rude it can be perceived, and also we're on Zoom a lot. If they have 7 classes a day, they're maybe tired. Maybe they don't want, I'm trying to sit like this and, trying to smile, and maybe they're tired. So, maybe you have an idea where you say, here's a compromise. You can turn your camera off for 10 minutes, but you have to turn it back on, or you have to have your camera on 80% of the time or something. So you can kind of come up with some compromises that you have, but just remember the human approach. COVID has been really hard, and learning online is difficult. And there are lots of reasons why people may not do it. But if someone refuses to do it, then again, you can go back and say, listen, this is in your syllabus. So I may count you absent. For if you don't turn your camera on, you may be considered absent. And so if it's a student who just doesn't want to do it, then you can have more harder consequences. So I like to always start soft. Tell me why. Most of the time it's they have a legitimate reason. If they don't, if it's an issue, then you say, listen, okay, well, I hear that and you're an adult and I can't tell you, but I can tell you that it's in the syllabus and it clearly says that you will lose participation points if you don't turn your camera on, or you will be counted absent. And if you get 10 absences, you will fail this class. And I would hate to see that because you were such a strong student and I think you can do better. And I think typically that's been very effective for me. Quality of education. I mean, yes and no. I understand. I think that people feel that students are behind. And I think particularly for K through 12, that's what we call young elementary students, middle school, high school in the US. K through 12 is our term. I think there's probably some truth to that, but in terms of you can't quite cover everything in the way that you would normally. But in terms of the quality of education that you provide, I think not necessarily. As I said, I think you can look at the activities that you want to cover and you can determine, can I still do this online? And maybe you can't do it exactly the same, but you can do a version of that. And I think personally, I felt like teaching online in spring, that's my most recent example, I was able to kind of empower students to be more autonomous. So it was a lot easier for me to say, here's the information you need. I'm going to check in with you to make sure, and then you're kind of responsible to do some of this as well. So I definitely think that the quality is based on you. So if you're using the same kind of quality of content that you normally would do, and you're trying to make it as interactive as you can, and you're communicating and you're engaging with students, then I think it can still be very effective online. But I do agree with Leo that it's a difficult thing. It's going to take a lot more work from teachers, and we can definitely know that for sure. Yes, absolutely, Leo. Yes, online classes, I would agree, are a lot of work. They're a lot more planning. Absolutely. You can show up and teach a face-to-face class. You can plan it, but make adjustments. You can say, guys, get in a group, talk to each other for 10 minutes about should we allow smoking on campus? Yes or no? I taught you the language, go. You don't have to plan it. Maybe you didn't even want to do that day. So I'm not saying you don't plan face-to-face classes. Of course you plan face-to-face classes, but it's a lot easier. But online classes are like a ship. Once it gets started in that direction, it's really hard to navigate it again. So is it more work? And I think the answer is yes, it's a lot of work. And then often it's a lot of work because you have to be able to make sure that every student in your class is getting the same content, the same feedback from you, the same amount of energy that you give each student. It's much more individualized, and it takes a lot of preparation, a lot of planning, and I would agree that it's more work. Yes. These are great questions. So impressed. Hard to answer, frankly. They're not easy questions to answer, but I'm very impressed with these questions. Is there anything else I didn't cover that, or no? I know we're way out of time. It's terrible classroom management on my part. No, I don't think so, Leo. I think you can say, listen, if you can email me at 2 a.m. and if I'm up, I might answer you. But I may not answer you at 2 a.m. So that's the expectation, like, and again, same thing in the syllabus. You always tell them at the beginning, the expectation is you will hear back from me within 24 hours. You will get feedback within 2 days, and that's it. You set up the boundaries for students. You do that. If students email you all around the clock, that's fine, but you don't have to, you're not obligated to answer those all the time. How do we balance synchronous and asynchronous? Yeah, I think that's a great question too, Jessica. So I want you to think through your content. What can the students do on their own? That becomes your asynchronous content. Maybe they do grammar lessons on their own. Maybe they work together with a partner over the weekend. Maybe they write some, they work on their essay. They watch the videos you gave them. They work on their essay. They submit it to you and wait on feedback. There's something students can do on their own. Synchronous needs to be something that you would really do in class, that you really either need everybody to do together, or it's really something that they need to be able to have like on the spot direction. And then that's how I would make those decisions. So for example, I'm teaching summer here in a couple of weeks. So during those 2-hour blocks, I'm going to do some writing workshops where I have the students working with partners. We're working on grammar. We're doing a lot of feedback. I'm giving them some structure, some models, and then they're going to be working through some things. So it's going to be a lot more of a workshop. And then, reading skills, I'm going to push some of those to do on their own. asynchronously, so that when they come back to class, I'm expecting them to already know what is a main idea, what is a detail, what is a transition word. So then when they come to class, they're demonstrating that they know how to do that. But I want them to do a lot more of that at home. And I'm going to spend a lot more time in class on writing and grammar, because that's something that's a little hard to, it's a harder to learn independently. So you can kind of decide what skills, if you're teaching a listening speaking class, in class, synchronously speaking may be what you want to focus on. Do discussions, do presentations, or you may want to get some listening skills in. Guys, we're going to do all of it. So today we're talking about global warming. Tell me what global warming is. Oh yeah, I agree. Okay, well, we're going to listen to this short video. So as you listen, take notes. So they take notes. Now let's talk about it. Okay, what do you guys think? Oh, okay, well, don't tell me, go to your groups, put them in groups, come back together. What did you guys discuss? What do you think about global warming? How can we solve this, situation? I agree. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, well, now let's write out some, examples. Now I want you to choose a topic on your own. Go do some research, come back to class, talk about that. So you can kind of plan, what things can they do on their own? What things can they do together? And I think as much as possible, integrate skills together and work on all of the skills as well.
And we have a question for you.
Oh, great. Oh, wait, what? Hold on, Edna, one more. One of the students' main claim is that they have a lot of asynchronous activity to do. How can you minimize? Again, you need to think about the students' credit hours. I don't know how you do it if you have credit hours. In the US, we have credit hours. So it means, like, if the students are expected to do 15 hours of work and we meet 4 hours in class, then 11 hours outside of class. So I would tell them, you are expected to do, in my syllabus, 11 hours of work outside of class. So, and I can send that to you, Ejna. I have something I give the students. It basically says, these are the things you do. This is what it is. This is how long it will take you. So for every activity that they do asynchronously, I give them the time. This is a 4-minute video. This activity is going to take you 30 minutes in theory, right? And so that the students know, I thought about that when I planned my activities. So I think even if it takes them longer, if you show them in your planning that you thought about, listen, this class is 11 hours. When I planned this content, I thought it's going to take you 11 hours. If it's taking you 22 hours, then we need to have a conversation that why is this taking you so long? And I think that will help you a lot. Okay, go ahead, Ejna. I'm sorry. Tell me your question.
No problem. Yes, I have to wait in the audience here asking you a question because we don't know when we are going to have again this opportunity, right?
Yes.
I'm a little curious, Professor Emily. So it's about your concept, your point of view. So let me know, what is your perspective about the approach of the blended learning, which we have in mixed class in terms of learning?
When you say mixed class, do you mean mixed proficiency, like some students that are higher or lower, or? Oh, you mean mixed, like hybrid learning?
Is that making a hybrid learners?
I personally feel that if it's done well, it can be very effective, actually. So this gets back to the quality question from earlier. Because I have seen, so I'm a teacher trainer, right? So I have observed classrooms, right? And I have also obviously taught many classes myself. And I know let's say it's my birthday and I didn't get to as much planning as I wanted to, over the weekend. And oh my God, it's Monday, right? So I show up to the class and I say, you know what, guys, I think today we're just gonna work in our workbook today. So it's really easy. Not that that's not quality work. That's, sometimes you have to do that. But I think it's really easy in a face-to-face situation to almost get by with not planning. Kind of planning, a little planning. Now, not always, because sometimes people are very planned, actually, and you have to be because you have standard curriculum and you have to meet those outcomes. And so it doesn't mean that necessarily. But personally, I feel if the hybrid learning is planned well, so you've really thought through, and I mean you like collectively, anyone, you've thought through, okay, what do they have to learn in classroom in the synchronous? What do they have to learn online? How can I make sure it's as difficult as it always would be? I don't want to make it easier online. And then, and kind of think through those things. I think it's possible, but I think everything comes down to planning and simplifying, because everything online becomes more complicated in that we don't have the person in front of us always to give us instructions. So an online course requires the teacher to have very good written communication and very good organizational skills. And teachers that may not have that can get by with that in a face-to-face scenario, but you can't in a hybrid and you can't online. So in order to ensure that the quality is there, I think if planning is there. So for example, if in a regular classroom, you would normally have students give a debate, you can still do that online. There's technology to do that. If the students still give a presentation, still possible online. If you want the students to write research, possible online. There really aren't that many things that students can't do online, other than the difficulty online is with timed assessments that are the same in terms of cheating and proctoring. So therein is the difficult in terms of quality, and that's not a question of, is your test a quality test? Is it a good test? That's an issue of test security. Whereas in a face-to-face classroom, you can watch them to see, are they cheating? Is there an issue? Are they getting help? Right? But when you're online, it's a little more difficult to do that. So if you have a hybrid situation and you're worried about students cheating, then you do some of the testing in the classroom as you normally would. And then the asynchronous part would be things that maybe it's not assessed, or it's stuff that you're not as worried about in terms of cheating. So that's how I would set that up. But do I think it doesn't have the same quality? I think the answer is no. I think we have the technology. If we design our courses well, I think they can have the same quality, if not more, because I really think it's very easy for a face-to-face. I mean, I've known teachers, it's like they have a syllabus, they have a book, they have a weekly lesson plan, and that's it. They might have some assessments, but they have not planned further. In order to have a good online class, you have to know what you're doing the entire semester. So if your semester is 15 weeks, then you have to have your 15 weeks planned. And I think that makes us better teachers. I think it makes it a better quality course. I truly believe that. So I think there are some difficulties, especially with assessments and plagiarism. I think that's true. But in terms of, is it not as good education? I don't think that's accurate. In fact, there may even be, and I'll keep my eyes out for that, Edna. I think there may even be research to say about that. So I'll keep my eyes open on that. But I don't think we can say that online classes are not as good. If anything, I think they could be more difficult. They can be. And especially, that's why we keep the technology simple, because we want to focus on the quality of the content and the skills that we're teaching them, and not make it where they have to be so overwhelmed with technology as well. Yeah.
So, Professor Emily, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
My coordinator is here, Professor Manuel, and he said thank you for
Absolutely.
talking. Yes. And I would like to say thank you for you taking your time to prepare for us this wonderful presentation. From now, I'm totally confident that we have learned a lot with you today. And for sure, this topic is very relevant and is significant impact of every student and guest who were able to watch this presentation. And I would like to say thank you again. And I hope to see you again
Yes.
in another presentation.
Yes.
And also, I would like to say thank you for this beautiful audience here. We
Yes,
have
thank
many
you.
students, many people here. And also, I can't forget to say thank you to David. He was responsible to manage all these kinds of tools and the technology to give us support to have this live here today. Okay, thank you so much, and I hope to see you as soon as possible. Right?
Absolutely. Yes. Take care. Thank you. Bye bye.
Ciao. Bye bye.